I've seen kids that I thought, oh, look at him, look at her. You know, few on-screen pairings felt as natural as Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. Their chemistry was effortless, filled with quick wit, playful tension, and an unspoken understanding that seemed to blur the line between acting and reality. Audiences watched them and assumed romance was inevitable. But surprisingly, Hepburn drew a quiet line, one she never crossed, even when it might have seemed music, natural. For years, that decision remained unexplained. Then, when she finally revealed her reasoning, it offered an unexpected glimpse into how she truly saw music. Cary Grant, the tragedy that shaped Hepburn. Born on May 12, 1907, Katharine Hepburn didn't come up in what anyone would call a proper or conventional household. She was raised in Hartford, Connecticut, music, in a big, outspoken, free-thinking family that stood out and not music, in a way the neighbors appreciated. The Hepburns had a reputation, and not the polite, kind people whispered about with admiration. They were seen as bold, even scandalous. Her mother was out there actively supporting women's suffrage, bringing young Katharine along to votes for women rallies, while her father openly advocated for sexual health awareness at a time when most people wouldn't even say the words out loud. In the early 1900s, that kind of openness was almost unheard of. To the town, it was shocking. To Katharine, music, it was normal. She grew up seeing her parents not as controversial figures, but as remarkable people who refused to shrink themselves. Music, that environment shaped her early. As a child, Katharine didn't feel tied to the expectations placed music on girls. She leaned more toward the boys, cut her hair short, and insisted music on being called Jimmy. Instead of correcting her or forcing her into a mold, her parents leaned in and supported her completely. That kind of freedom gave her room to grow into herself music without fear. She thrived, becoming a strong athlete, especially music, in golf, and discovering a love for performing. She would stage full productions in her backyard, already showing signs of the bold presence that would later define her career. From the outside, it looked like an ideal childhood, lively, supportive, and full of possibility. But underneath that bright surface, something devastating was waiting. At just 13 years old, her life took a sudden, dark turn. She and her older brother Tom Music traveled to New York for Easter break, staying with their aunt. It was supposed to be a joyful escape, and by all accounts, it was. Tom even Music described it as one of the best times of his life. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. The morning after a night at the theater, Katharine walked into the attic and found her brother hanging from a beam, lifeless. Music suspended by a curtain tie. He was just 15. The scene was unmistakable, and Music, the trauma of that moment would stay with her forever. But what followed made it even more complicated. Instead of facing the reality of what had happened, the Hepburn family shut down emotionally. Music. They refused to accept that Tom had taken his own life. Instead, they clung to the idea that it was some kind of accident, a failed experiment. They rewrote the story, Music, and in doing so, avoided the grief. For Katharine, that silence left a mark. The loss alone was devastating, but watching her family deny it created a deeper fracture. She became withdrawn, anxious, and Music guarded. The bright, fearless girl started to disappear, replaced by someone who struggled to trust the world around her. As the years passed, the weight of that loss didn't fade. It settled in. She pulled away from others, finding it difficult to connect. Eventually, she left school and continued her education privately, isolating herself further. No matter where she went, the music memory of her brother followed closely behind. It wasn't until 1924 that a shift began. She enrolled at Benmore College largely to satisfy her mother, but she stepped into that environment cautiously. Social life didn't come easy. For weeks, she avoided even sitting with other students during meals, keeping to herself and staying on the outside. But that version of her wasn't permanent. Something started to crack open. By her second year, she joined the drama group and landed a bold role, the leading man in a play. It required her to dress in men's music, clothing, something she didn't just do on stage. She embraced it off stage, too, leaning fully into that identity without hesitation. Then came one of her more rebellious moments. She stripped down and went swimming in the cloister pond. Music completely uninhibited. It wasn't just about shock value. It was a sign of someone testing boundaries, pushing music against expectations, and reclaiming a sense of freedom. College became a turning point. It gave her space to rediscover that daring side of herself, though it didn't come without consequences. Music, at one point, she was suspended for smoking in her dorm. Just another example of how she refused to follow the rules laid out for her. Around music this time, she also fell into a passionate relationship with Lello Ogden Smith, a wealthy and devoted young man she affectionately called Luddy. Their connection was intense, playful, music, and full of energy. Behind closed doors, their relationship had its share of bold, unconventional moments. She was comfortable in her own skin, even posing nude for his photographs. Music, completely unbothered by the norms of the time. Still, despite the chemistry, something about it never fully settled. Even she would later admit that their relationship, while emotionally charged, didn't cross every line people might expect. It was complicated, and like many early romances, timing played a role in music in how things unfolded. As her love for performance deepened, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a music passing interest. It was the path she wanted. Her father, however, saw it differently. To him, acting wasn't a stable or respectable future. He worried she'd struggle. And honestly, music, he wasn't entirely wrong about the challenges ahead. Because when she started, it was rough. Katharine Hepburn music didn't step into success right away. Her early days in theater were filled with setbacks, music, and embarrassment. Critics tore into her voice, calling it too sharp and unpleasant. The criticism hit hard enough that she sought out vocal training just to keep going. Then came a moment that should have been her breakthrough, but turned into a disaster. Music. When the lead actress in a play was suddenly replaced, Hepburn stepped in as the understudy. It was her chance to prove herself. Instead, everything unraveled. She showed up late, stumbled through her lines, rushed the dialogue, and even tripped on stage. It was a kind of performance actors dread, the one that sticks with you for all the wrong reasons. After that, things didn't improve. She lost the role music, and her confidence took a hit. Frustrated and uncertain, she made a surprising move. She married Ledlow Ogden Smith. But that decision didn't come from a place of lasting commitment. Within weeks, she realized married life wasn't for her. She returned to acting, leaving the relationship in a strange in-between state music that dragged on for years. Looking back, she was brutally honest about it. She admitted she wasn't ready for marriage and acknowledged how one-sided music the relationship had been. Smith gave her unwavering support, even financially backing her ambitions, but she couldn't give him the same in return. She later described her own behavior harshly, recognizing how deeply she had taken advantage of his devotion. In the end, music, her focus was clear. Her heart belonged to the stage. And still, the struggle continued. She couldn't seem to hold on to a job. Theater companies kept letting her go one after another. It reached a music point where she directly asked playwright Philip Berry why he wouldn't cast her. His answer didn't soften the blow. He told her plainly that she just wasn't very good. It was a kind of music honesty that could break someone, but not her. She kept going, and eventually persistence started to pay off. Music. In 1932, she landed a role in a Broadway production called The Warrior's Husband. This music, time, the response was different. The reviews were strong. People were finally starting to notice her. Sitting in the audience one night was someone who would change everything. A music talent scout who saw something undeniable in her presence. That performance opened the door to Hollywood. She was brought in for a screen test at RKO Studios, where director George Cukor immediately recognized that she wasn't like anyone else. There was something unusual about her, something powerful. He saw it right away. The studio took a chance, and she didn't make it easy. Even as a newcomer, she demanded a salary of $1,500, music a week, an almost unheard of figure at the time. It was a bold move, but it paid off. Her film debut in A Bill of Divorcement put her alongside John Barrymore, a legend in his own right. For someone so new, music, the pressure could have been overwhelming, but she didn't show it. She held her ground and delivered a performance that turned heads. When the film was released, critics took notice. There was something about her that couldn't be ignored, a presence that set her apart. But as she was about to learn, music success in Hollywood came with its own complications. Behind the glamour, there were expectations, scrutiny, and personal entanglements waiting to unfold. Music. And it wouldn't be long before she found herself caught up in her first real scandal.